All right, good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us tonight for iCare Pro's Web Metrics of Successful Practices, presented by Jason Daniels. Jason will walk through the tools you need to benchmark your web metrics against your own peers and understand what needs to change to get more patients in your office from your site. And we want to thank iCare Pros for doing this for us, and we'll go ahead and get this started. And towards the end of the presentation, if you guys can hold your questions, there'll be a time for question and answer at the end. And all right, I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
All right, thank you, Rachel, very much. On behalf of iCare Pro, just wanted to say thank you to the Prima Group. I got to tell you, I'm on the phone with a lot of doctors throughout the week, and we hear nothing but wonderful things about Prima, and it really is an honor for us to be able to be here tonight and share with you some of what we learned over the last 12 years of working with optometrists and practices around the United States, all the things that are new with web marketing and how it relates to getting to patients. So really, we are thrilled, and thank you very much for being here. So without too much further ado, allow me to introduce myself. Jason Daniels, Director of Business Development, Director of Sales for iCare Pro, have been for about 6 years. I wear a few different hats at iCare Pro, mostly on the sales end, but my job is very much about listening, in hearing what is happening in the environment, in the marketing environment, in the optometric environment, and making sure that our products are able to deliver, of course, the results that they need to in order to work, but more than that, to be relevant and hopefully to help our practices grow, which is really what this webinar is about tonight. And what we're going to talk about tonight is, if I can boil it down, it is going to be not Google Analytics, so don't get worried. It's about how we use the web and how we use data in order to tweak that data, benchmark that data, tweak that data in order to make sure the website and your web assets are performing at top-notch. And what do I mean by performing at top-notch? That means that you are gleaning as many new patients as possible from the online space. One of the great things about what we do and why we're very into what we do is really we try to make practice growth easier. Of course, establishing your reputation and making sure your existing patients come back, okay, that's probably more in your court. But when it comes down to it, making it easier for people to find you, making it easier for the practice to sit back, do what it does well, and make sure that as many new people are coming in as possible, that's what we do. So we like to think of ourselves as a big part, a big component of how a practice is trying to go from point A, of course, to point B in its growth. And of course, Nathan and the team will probably be able to give you a lot more information about the metrics involved and finances of practice growth. But new patients, I'm sure, is on that list somewhere. I guarantee it. So Google Analytics, okay? You love it, you hate it, maybe you've never even seen it. You might have no idea what all those numbers mean in Google Analytics. We'll talk about that a little bit more a little bit later. But Google Analytics tracks the traffic on your website, okay? Imagine if every time somebody came into your door of your office, you were able to get their age, their, where they came from, what car they're driving, how tall they are, and you kind of get that sort of in, in the exam. But what if you knew everything about them, essentially, right? How the office is working, how many people sit in that chair versus that chair, how many people are comfortable in the exam room, how long does it take them to go from walking to the door to the desk? I mean, every single dimension. So Google Analytics gives us that analytical capability for your website. It allows us to glean all of the data that describes how people get to your site and what they do when they're there. Okay? Now, again, the goal of this webinar is not to deal with Google Analytics. However, it is to deal with the fact that we are in a data-driven world. And the only way to survive in that world and excel is to harness that data and then turn it into actionable information. That's what we're going to learn how to do tonight. So again, Google Analytics, we're not going to discuss in depth, but one thing you have to understand is that Google Analytics is limited. It allows us to see how people are moving and what they're doing and what's happening on the site, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really give us the number of new patients who have come into the practice. So when we understand how your website is working using Google Analytics, okay, we can start to understand what needs to change in order to change that performance, okay? If we're driving a car, whatever it might be, and we notice that there's a little bit of rattling in third gear, or we see that on this turn, you know, the brake calipers are heating, whatever it might be, when we're able to measure where we are able to change that. We are able to examine that and then go from there. So Google Analytics really gives us that. Now, more often than not, okay, anytime you're talking about an investment, you want to get a return on investment, of course. The problem is that the R in ROI, the revenue portion of the investment, is very hard to calculate, okay? So, you know, staff in the office are busy, the office is busy, and most systems are ineffective at really capturing how new patients come in, where they come in from, as manual as you get. It's very hard to do. Data from Google Analytics is a great way to look at these returns. Okay? And so any investment that you're making in new patients in a web-based environment, okay, is all about reading the return. And reading that return is all about Google Analytics. All right, let's jump in. So, first and foremost, we want to look at where we stand, right? How is my practice doing? You come into the doctor, you get a physical. How am I doing, doc? Okay? Compared to all the other patients you see, compared to what is normal, where am I? Where am I? Most people, most practices have absolutely no idea how their web traffic is working, how it's working for them, what's good, what's bad. If I told you right now, hey, you know, you get 300 visits to your website every month, you know, is that good? Is that bad? Okay? So once we identify, okay, once we know, okay, that what numbers we need to keep track of, okay, our second challenge, of course, is to get a sense of whether or not they're good. Okay? First we got to get the data, then we got to make sure it's good data. We got to make sure it is good compared to other people with that data, of course. I can give you all sorts of numbers about how a practice is doing online, but with no way to ground the number, it's meaningless. Okay? So our goal tonight, and of course in general, is to add meaning to these numbers so that we know what's good and what's bad. Now, obviously, once we know what's good and what's bad, we know what we need to do to improve. Okay? And these are the 3 steps we'll take tonight. Okay, so what you're looking at on the screen right now is a printout of a sample Google Analytics report. Okay? We're not going to get in depth on this, okay? But we are going to selectively pull information out of this that's going to help us come out with a clear picture of what's happening. Now, I just want to let you know Google Analytics is really, really cool, okay? It tells you everything about every single person who's come into your website, what they searched to get there, what search engine they came from, how long they spent on the site, what they looked at. I mean, you name it, okay? There are many, and it gets even more advanced than that. They're constantly improving that product. Google's incredible. But the 3 main things that you really need to focus on, okay, in order to really see how the practice is doing, okay, that's going to be traffic quantity, traffic quality, and the new patient funnel, which we'll talk about. That's the data we want. So, traffic quantity. This is the number of website visits, okay? This is the simplest key indicator we have to work with. And here's a very interesting fact, okay? The relationship between new patients and traffic is not linear. Growing your traffic from 200 visits per month to 1,000 visits per month, that's a 5 times increase, by the way. Okay, that increase in traffic will result in a 20-fold increase in new patient appointments. You heard me right. 200 visits to 1,000 visits typically will result in a 20 times increase in new patient appointments. So then the question is, okay, how do we go from 200 visits to 1,000 visits? And we're going to get there, right? How, just throw money at that. It's not that simple, okay? Going from 200 to 1,000 visits is actually very, very hard. But the point here is that the biggest companies in the world, smallest companies in the world, it doesn't matter where you are or what you do. You want as many people getting to your website as possible. Okay? Now, from a more theoretical standpoint, the reason you want people getting to your website as often as possible is because your website is in the business of selling your practice. That's what it does. Your website is what you have out there to convince the person who's searching that your practice is superior to the guy next door. That's it. You want as many people getting there as possible. You want the site to be as effective as possible. We'll talk about that a little bit. But that's the story here. We want to make sure that we're getting as much traffic as possible. So traffic quantity is the first and foremost data indication. Okay? Now, once we have that, okay, we have traffic quality. All traffic is not created equal. Okay? Don't kid yourself in the last slide. You can't just buy your way to 5 times more traffic and expect 20 times more patients. I wish it was that simple. I'd be retired, believe me. Okay? There are 3 important factors we're going to look at that all affect the conversion of website traffic into new patients. Okay? What percentage of your traffic comes from Google? If you get 500 visitors to your website and 450 of them came from Google, is that good? It sounds great. It means you're doing really well on the Google rankings, which should be celebrated. That's fantastic, but that might not be so, and we'll see in a minute. Pages per visit. This is an obvious point, but very powerful. How long do people stick around for? How many pages are they looking at? Okay? Then, of course, bounce rate, which of course is intrinsically tied to this. Okay? This is one of the most famous terms out there in the Google world, bounce rate. Okay? What does it mean? It refers to the number of people that came into your site, looked at one page, and then left. In other words, somebody bounced in and they bounced out. Okay? That's the bounce rate. These are the 3 data points that tell us the quality of traffic coming in. So again, we have traffic quantity, which is the number of people who are coming into the site. We have traffic quality, which is what are these people coming in? Who are these people coming in? What are they doing when they're there? And then finally is the new patient funnel. Okay, this is the last metric we use to see where the practice stands. Okay, everything is nice to know, but if you don't actually track new patients, this whole exercise is basically useless. Okay, every site either has a page that visitors can use to schedule or request appointments, or link to an outside service that takes care of that. Okay. And we need to track that, how many times a month that happens. That's the telephone, everybody. I don't know who this is. Hang on one sec. Let me unplug this. This phone never rings, and of course when we're in a webinar, that's when it rings. Unbelievable. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So we want to track how many people are scheduling appointments on these forms and these third-party services. But the other thing we want to track is the phone. How many people are calling the office and scheduling an appointment when they're looking at the website? So we have created some very cool code to track phone calls coming into the practice. We'll talk about that a little bit. But these need to be tracked. Okay? If you're not tracking the source of new patients, you must start. Otherwise, doing anything online is going to be basically useless. Right? The whole goal here is to tweak all the variables we're going through here in order to produce more patients. That's it. So, website visits, percent of Google traffic, pages per visit, bounce rate, appointment scheduling, and phone tracking. That's going to give you all the data that you need in order to make some decisions. Now, what we do here at iCare Pro right now, we are currently tracking, okay, 1,431 websites. That's a lot of websites, which means that we have the data for all these things that we've spoken about so far for all of these websites. We received permission from a practice, okay, who shall remain anonymous, to share their website traffic data tonight, and we're going to gain a lot of insight right now on as to how these numbers actually play out in the real world. Okay, so here we go. 815 total visits. Okay, and now the question is that good? So, the only way to tell if traffic is good, okay, is basically to compare that with your peers. Thankfully, we have that data on hand, and here we go. How much traffic should your website be getting, okay? That really is the question. Again, the only way to answer is in comparison to your peers. If 90% of your peers are getting more traffic than you, okay, and they're a similar type of practice, I'd say you have a problem. So let's take our anonymous doctor here. Let's call him Dr. Jones. And in order to see if his 815 website visits are good, okay, let's face it, it sounds pretty good, we capture some interesting practice profile points, each of which has an impact on the website's traffic. Some of the more important factors here, all right, let's just go through this real quick. The population, okay, if you live in a place that has 1,000 people, okay, this is a non-starter, okay? What's the local population? And typically we see, and again, don't quote me on this just right now, but typically 30,000 people in an area is a very important threshold that we see. There's enough people there, and also obviously it depends on how many ODs are practicing in the area, what the competition's like. But anyway, that's an important number. So population, that's going to have a huge impact on traffic. Okay, how many locations a practice has? Huge factor. How many doctors in the practice? We found a correlation there as well. And in case you're wondering why the EHR system matters, there are many services that the EHRs offer that can affect the traffic on the website. For example, like if new patients can fill in patient history forms online, if there's online scheduling. So that obviously increases the number of people coming to the site because everybody's coming to the site to fill out forms. So that does count. So Dr. Jones, okay, how do we start to answer the question now? Is that good? Let's see how he stacks up. Okay, 815 visits. Okay, you can see now, all right, how he compares to everybody else, and this gives you some good insight as to what can be done to improve the traffic. So, Dr. Jones, okay, he's got 2 doctors, all right, and in that area, he's scoring very well amongst other practices that have 2 doctors, okay? He's got an A, 87.84%. Very good. Now, when it comes to traffic as compared to other practices that serve a population of 3 million people, okay, his numbers aren't quite as good. As you see, population is a B-. So there is way more, that indicates to us that the market is big enough, okay, compared to the traffic that he's getting compared to other people in a 3 million population area, okay, there is room for improvement, okay, about, 38% room for improvement, plenty. And so that metric isn't as good. At 63%, he might have a tougher time with competition, okay? His overall marketing could use a boost with greater local reach, all right? And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But it's interesting to note that given Dr. Jones's revenue category, you'll see he's in the $2 to $4 million bracket. Now this is actually really cool. Most practices, by the way, wouldn't complain about that revenue category, but his traffic is very low compared to other practices in the 2 to 4 million range. And by the way, it's likely because his practice just broke into the $2 million category. So he just entered, his practice group has been growing, and he just entered this, this strata. So that's probably why that's low there. So is that good? Is that good? Okay, he's got, overall, if I were Dr. Jones, I would be pretty happy with my website traffic. And I'm sure at this point you're wondering how you could possibly do the same thing with your website data. Okay? So, and this is what we're going to talk about for the remainder of the webinar, right? We're at 1,431 websites right now where we're able to benchmark all of this. If you have a website already, all we have to do is install some code to it, and you can see instantaneously what, I mean, it's going to take a little while, you know, a few days, a few weeks, a month, just to get that in there, of course, but we'll be able to start measuring instantaneously what is happening on the site. And you will be able to see, here, let me go back a slide, wow, based on the number of years in practice, based on the population, based on all these things, what is my website doing? That's it. Okay, now, once we have determined, once you have determined, okay, now I have the data, and by the way, this is with anything in life. This is you know, in order to make a decision about anything, you know, you get a marketing guy playing the phone. Hey, listen, got this great package for you. It's going to be great. Search engine optimization, social media is awesome. It's like, yeah, it sounds good, but okay, what data am I basing this decision off of? It could be that my Google traffic, and we're going to talk about that in a second, it could be I don't need search engine optimization at all, even though I'm not ranking #1. So again, and we're going to get into that, but at the end of the day, is that good? Okay? The only way to know that is by using Google Analytics appropriately and obviously plugging it into a benchmark system like we've created here. Now, what's cool about our benchmarking system, we call it Power Data, by the way. And it is it is the you know, it's the only one of its kind in the industry right now, and it's very, very easy to get in on it. What's cool about this, there are other benchmarks in other industries, but that gets complicated because they're different industries, and it's hard to really see what's happening with just optometry. That's what's so special about this. So that's important. So what do we do in order to improve? Okay? Now, we're going to talk about a few things here. We got, you know, what are we at? 25, another 20 minutes. All right, everybody's doing great. Hope everybody's got a nice drink, maybe a snack. If I were you, I'd be having some popcorn. Very into popcorn these days. And the question is, what can you do to improve the number of people coming in? Now, just remember, all of these things are predicated on the number of people coming into the site. There's no question about it. So when somebody is talking about marketing, whatever it might be, your stance is, these are all things that bring people to my site so that the site can then be tweaked to close more and more of these patients and bring them into the practice. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So what can you do to generate more action on the website? Okay, everything helps. Everything. Everything takes time and effort, okay? But there are many, many ways to generate more traffic to the site, okay? I put, you know, there's so many things in here, you know, SEO, direct marketing, social media, Foursquare, reputation. Reputation is huge, okay? Getting people to fill out reviews on Google, search engine optimization, like we said, okay? What are some other ones I've written here? There are so many different ways of doing this. Do you need all of them? No, okay? And we'll talk about some of the main ones. As I mentioned before, traffic quantity, okay, is directly related to new patients, okay? So traffic quality also has a direct impact on new patients, as you would imagine, okay? So that's definitely important to keep in mind. Okay, just wanted to add that. So, is that good? There's such a thing, remember we talked about Google traffic before, so let me tell you about this. This is very interesting. There's such a thing as too much traffic from Google. and of course too little traffic from Google. Okay, Dr. Jones is in what we call the Google traffic sweet spot, all right, which is between 40 and 60% of the entire website's traffic coming from Google. Now, being in the sweet spot means that a practice is actually making good use of all the means they have available to drive traffic to their website. Okay, there's no question about that. Namely, potential patients, which, as we know, the majority, not all, come from online searches using Google. Okay, now, they're also getting good traffic from existing patients. Okay, it's critical to market to existing patients on a regular basis. This is crucial. Okay, when you're getting 40% of your traffic from Google, it means 60% of your traffic is coming from another source. Okay, that source could be an email marketing campaign, could be Facebook, could be logging in, whatever it might be. Okay, they're not coming from Google. And so what we want, that sweet spot tells us that you're massaging the existing patient base enough so that they're coming back to the site, whether you're doing whatever it might be, you're running a campaign, we'll talk about that on the next slide actually, and that of course is balanced with the searches being done through Google, for new appointments, okay? And that's the balance. Just like there's the balance of new patients and returning patients, there's a critical sweet spot there. Same thing with Google traffic, all right? We don't want 100% of your traffic from Google because that means nobody's coming from your site that's been there before, basically, that's an existing patient, okay? So that indicates a very healthy balance. So the number one source of new patients that every practice has, okay, is via referrals. That will never change, okay? When you do a good job, when your patients love you, that is the gold mine, okay? No marketing can overpower your reputation. It's impossible, okay? Marketing purveys a reputation. It doesn't create one. Very important. So when you have effective marketing to existing patients, it keeps you in the forefront of their mind, okay? Brings them back to the site and increases their referrals. So I have an example here. We have a trunk show, okay? These are all Facebook campaigns that we've created that you're looking at right now, all right? A trunk show. Typically what happens in a normal optometry practice, okay? This will sound very familiar. Somebody comes in, they have an exam, and hopefully, they buy some eyeglasses, and then you probably will not see that person for at least another year, okay? So assuming they don't need refills and things like that, okay? You probably won't see them for another year. What's interesting here is that if that person was thinking of making some type of frame purchase, fashion frame, something they wanted, an accessory, whatever it might be, they might not go to your office as a first stop. They might go online, they might go to a boutique in town, whatever it might be. For some reason, our patient bases have forgotten that we also have a serious retail side of things, okay? So a trunk show is an amazing way to recall your existing patient base back, saying, whoa, we have, these brands, here's what's going on tonight at the trunk show, or, for we're doing, a catered lunch, whatever it might be, okay? So these type of marketing campaigns through Facebook and email, of course, are wonderful ways to keep existing patients engaged. And by the way, if there's a trunk show or there's something happening with kids, whatever it might be, that's something that they can tell their friends about. You are trying to induce a constant state of word of mouth. Facebook campaigns, all these kinds of things are ways to increase that. That's it. So, according to our data, this is an interesting point, our 1,400 sites, getting more than 60% of your traffic from Google is actually not as good as it sounds, like I said, okay? But you're getting traffic, and that's great, and people getting to the site, and that's great, okay? But you want more existing patients. It means your existing patients are being touched by the things that you're sending out. When we plug a website in and we see that all the traffic is coming from Google, it means there's a communication problem with existing patients. It must. It must. You have an untapped gold mine. Okay? They're already connected to you. They're already to be a fan. They already love what you do. And now you just have to massage those lines. That's it. That's it. So we use the term, we call these integrated campaigns, right? And we use the term integrated because we integrate them across every single front of your online presence. Facebook, the website, Twitter, Google+, email, poster for the office, you name it. It means having the same message across all the marketing channels. Most practices do this on one channel. They'll have a sign for this. They'll be running this. But it's not a unified experience. When you have a unified campaign, okay, when everybody's seeing the same thing at every single portal of entry or interface, that's very powerful. That means you're really hitting everybody you need to hit. All right? And if you want to drive your Google traffic down to the sweet spot of less than 60%, you got to market to existing patients. That's it. And those are the people who are going to recommend you the most anyway. I mean, dollar for dollar. That's where it makes sense. Okay, so if the Google traffic is too low, okay, meaning it's below 40%, all right, now it's likely that your website is suffering from poor search engine visibility, okay, and needs some help with SEO. The SEO world, as probably everybody on this call knows, is simple. It's also quite complicated at the same time. Simple because, of course, the goal is to rank highly on Google. 60% of people really stay at the first 3 results on Google. Or people who are clicking on organic sections will stay on the first 3. Okay, that's huge. And that is something that can't be neglected. If you have a website today, the only way to get Google traffic is to be on page 1. So this whole thing doesn't work without that. It's a must. It's a must. So it's simple, of course, because we know we need to rank high. All right. And while we're on that subject, let me just add something there. Searches for glasses, okay, or contact lenses are absolutely 100% useless at driving new patients to your office, and nor will it result in any type of online sale. Okay? So if any SEO company ever is calls you up and says, hey, you're not ranking for glasses or contact lenses in your area, you might want to take a look at this, you could say, no, I really don't need to take a look at that. Okay, statistically, those people are not looking for an eye exam. Okay, so here's what it boils down to. Okay, although everyone wants to sell more glasses or contact lenses, you're not going to sell more by ranking highly in your area for glasses or contacts. Okay, you will sell more glasses and contacts by ranking highly for keywords that are relevant to patients who are looking for exams. Once you bring them in, then the sale is all yours. What's complicated about SEO is achieving high ranking. Okay, because everybody is doing this. And as you know, Google keeps changing the rules. Okay, they update their algorithm all the time. If I wrote a course on Google and SEO, we'd probably have to change it every 3 months, give or take, just because the game changes that fast. All right, so if the Google ranking is, the Google traffic percentage is too low, all right, SEO, search engine optimization, would be what we would need to do to bring that up. Okay, and again, this is a numbers game. That's all this is. Okay, now, pages per visit. Okay, the higher the pages per visit, all right, the more engaged a visitor is. And by the way, this is, we call this, the secret killer. Okay, this is, there is so much potential here with pages per visit. It tells us a vast array of information. Okay, let's focus in for a second. Most people just gloss over this number, by the way. Okay, but don't. Here's the story. We took all of our sites, all 1,400, and ran a simple check. Okay, average new patient appointments for sites with less than 2 pages per visit An average new patient appointment for sites with more than 2 pages per minute per visit. Okay, simple enough. The average for less than 2 patients per visit, okay, was 4 new patients per month. The average for more than 2 pages per minute, why do I keep saying pages per minute? Pages per visit was 6 new patients a month. Okay, 50% more new patients from the site based on this factor alone. At $300 per new patient, that's $600 a month or $7,200 a year just because of the pages per visit metric. Okay, we actually, I don't know if anybody here gets our blog, but we put out a blog post recently on this exact topic and made a number of recommendations on what a practice can do to increase their pages per visit. And before you think you can game the system and force people to looking for more information on your site and putting things in different places, okay, it won't work, okay, because you're talking about real people, and as you know, people have serious ADD when it comes to surfing, okay. So your site, if it's at all confusing, okay, I can't find what I want immediately, something turns me off, I am gone. Okay, your competition is 2 clicks away. 1 click out of your site and 1 click onto theirs. That's it. There's no getting into a car to go interview the other person. Happens instantaneously. So what can we do to improve pages per visit? Okay, it needs to be engaging. Your site needs to be clean, attractive, well laid out. Okay, everybody knows this. Clear calls to action. Your website support should be able to help you with this. Okay, at least point out what needs to be fixed. And you want to engage your visitors. Bottom line, when you get to your website, if you're bored there, then they are too. All right. The more people like what they see, the more people they're going to want to come in. And here's a statistic that everybody should take home. 90% of all traffic to your website starts at your homepage. Okay. The homepage is key. Just as practices spend a tremendous amount of time and money to create a certain ambience when people walk into your office, a certain feeling, certain color scheme, it is no different with the website. It's probably even more important because once someone's in your office, you're not really selling them to get in anymore. You're not trying to convince them. They're already there. Now you just got to convince them that they should come back. Okay? When it comes to the website, this is the thing that's convincing them to come in. They don't have you on the phone walking through the site. Well, doctor, they're not interviewing you. They're talking on the site. That's what you have. So the site needs to be engaging, and that's, of course, how we really, really influence the pages per visit. Okay. Now, bounce rate. Okay. The number of people who have come in and they just leave after looking at 1 page. All right, and guys, we're doing good here. We've got another 5 minutes. Got a little bit more information to go through. I'm actually going to skip this because there is something else I do want to share with you. But let me just tell you something real quick. Essentially, bounce rate is very misunderstood. Okay? Theoretically, if you had a bounce rate of 0, that'd be nice, but actually that wouldn't be good. Okay? Because there are some visitors to your site, typically about 30%, by the way, who only ever want to look at 1 page. They get their information, the number, the map, the directions, whatever, and they go. Okay? And that's okay. All right? For many people, like returning patients, they don't really need any more information than that. Okay? They have what they need, and they go. That's why you're never really going to get a bounce rate of lower than 30%. Okay? It's almost impossible to find a bounce rate of lower than 30%. From there up, however, bounce rate has a pretty big impact on driving new patients. Okay? Most practices have a bounce rate between 30 and 60%. The closer you can get to a 30% bounce rate, the better. Okay? Now, in fact, let's take a look at this real quick. Okay? Practices with a bounce rate of 30 to 40% get double the new patient appointments than practices with a bounce rate of 50 to 60%. Okay? This is huge. And this all has to do with the quality of your site. Okay? This is a simple thing to fix. Simple thing to fix. Somebody gets in, we want them to stay. Okay? How do you decrease the bounce rate? Make the site awesome. Can't go into much detail right now on that. We're running out of time. Site's got to be awesome. Okay? Now, with that said, all right, I'm going to tell you one more thing about this, and that is that a recent stat said, okay, a website is judged within 50 milliseconds. Okay, and here's the quote. I'll read it to you. It's pretty cool. The lasting effect of first impressions is known to psychologists as the halo effect. If you can snare people with attractive design, they're more likely to overlook other minor faults with the site and may rate its actual content more favorably. Okay, so we want to make sure the site rocks. Now, I don't have a lot of time left, guys, so let me just go right over here. Okay, so at the end of the month, basically what we've devised is a way to track incoming phone calls and new patients coming in. And of course, at the end of the month, we're able to report on that, exactly how many new patients are scheduled, exactly how many returning patients are scheduled, based on the number of phone calls and online appointment requests that are submitted. Now, what I want to do here for the last 2 minutes, okay, is come right over here. Okay, so for the last year, we've had a pretty advanced phone system working. It's really just a code on about 800 of our websites, okay? Oh, really, actually, the numbers are a little bit different. About 100 of our practices, okay? We had it for 800, but we were really tracking very closely about 100 of them. We installed call tracking, which means that we put a what's called a ghost phone number on their websites. It's a number that somebody calls. It's not the number that's on their, you know, the sign-out phone, the business card. It's a number that just goes on the website. And when it's called, we know that that call is coming from the website. So when the call comes in, the staff will pick up the phone, and they'll hear a voice that will say, you know, website. And then the patient will start speaking. They'll have a conversation. The patient will hang up the phone. And what will happen is a voice will come on and basically say, please press, to the staff member, please press 1 if this is a new patient, schedule an exam, or 2 if it was an existing patient, schedule an exam. They'll press 1 or 2 and hang up the phone. Now, what we have done, okay, it took about 8 months, by the way, and as you can imagine, it was quite the fun. We hired a statistician, and what we did was we had 50,000 phone calls, in which 5,000 of them were logged with a 1 or a 2, with a new patient or existing patient. So the statistician analyzed all this data, okay, and he looked at the phone number, the city, the zip, how long the call was, and he really used the call length as the predictive variable to determine what actually happened. Was it a new patient or not? Sure enough, there was a strong correlation between the call length and whether the call resulted in a new patient. So now we have a model that is 95% accurate, where we can say, excuse me, every month, based on the number of calls that come in and the length of those calls, how many of those were likely, with about a 5% margin of error, how many of those were likely new patients and how many were existing patients. So this is Dr. Jones' report you're looking at on your screen. He had 124 total calls come in, and of the durations that the statistician came out with, he basically had 36 new patients. Now this is really cool because now we have the ability to see what is happening, okay? Now, the good news is he has the Edge also. Many of you know Jay Binkowitz as well. We work with him very closely. The Edge will actually pull his actual revenue per patient using the business intelligence software that they have, okay? And, you know, that's calculated from the practice PMS, all right? And now Dr. Jones can see the amount of monthly revenue that is being produced from new patients that are finding and using the website as a decision-making tool. $14,761, okay? That's pretty sweet. So what we really want to drill everything down into tonight, guys, okay, is how is my practice doing, okay? How is my practice doing? What is my data, all right? I'm going to send out an email to everybody after the webinar, likely tonight, tomorrow, you know, to give you the ability to sign up for Power Data. This will give you all the insights that you need in order to see what is happening with your data and how you measure up to everybody else, okay? No problem. What can we do to improve? Okay, we covered a few ways. Again, we need a lot more time. There's a lot of different social media, search engine optimization. Depends on what the problem is. Okay, in order to come up with a solution to improve, you have to diagnose the problem. You have to have data. That's it. Something that's really interesting. Okay, check this out. When you get more traffic, more good traffic, of course, we don't know about that now. Okay, a lot happens. A lot happens. New patients per website visit. Okay? We grow the number, we grow the traffic, we grow the appointments. 100%. Wherever you are along this line, 200 visits. Okay? 1 patient a month from your site. 400 visits, 5 new patients a month. The moment you hit 500 visits per month, you've hit the tipping point. And you get more new patients per visit than ever before. My advice to everybody listening tonight, okay, take your web traffic pretty seriously, okay? It only is going to help you. It is only going to make you growing the practice and bringing new people in easier and on autopilot. That's what this is. These numbers are based on an analysis of over 1,000 practices, okay? I don't like to sound like an alarmist, okay? Without being ready to help, of course. So, of course, we can help. Okay? We can install Power Data on your site, check out how it's going, complete the profile, and we can do that. And again, I will, this is the link, okay, you need for Power Data. All you got to do, I'll send you an email, all right? And again, you know, it's all about the data. With the right data, you can do anything. Anything. That's the start. Whether you work with us on your marketing or not, you're going to have the ability to see what's happening, the ability to respond, and know what actually is needed or not. Okay? And I know I spoke very fast tonight, everybody. I apologize. I just had so much to cram in here. Go sign up for Power Data, okay? And we can start tracking all this for you. If you don't have a website, obviously we should talk about that. But with that said, I want to once again thank the Prima team for having us tonight, and I again thank you for having us. And if we could be of any help, please let us know. But definitely go over to Power Data. I'll be emailing everybody very, very soon with this link as well. Okay. Rachel, you still there?
Yes, I am, and thank you, Jason, one more time for coming in today and kind of going over this webinar. I'm sure it was very helpful, and we appreciate it very much. I do want to point out that if anyone has any questions, absolutely feel free to contact me, and I'll make sure your question is answered. And then also, for any Prima members, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our members only section of the website in the next couple of days. So if you do want to refer back to it, you are absolutely able to do that. Any questions? There's a spot down at the bottom if anyone has any quick questions, or feel free to contact me after this. Jason, it looks like we have one question. Are you still there to see it?
I am here. I don't see the question on my screen. For some reason, it doesn't show up. Maybe because I'm presenting something. I'm not sure. You want to? All
right. It says, what do you think about ZocDoc and how it drives more traffic to your practice?
Yeah. So ZocDoc, just going on the theme of what we were talking about, it's a way for people. It's a way. ZocDoc is a bridge. Okay. It's another bridge to make sure that people can get from a state of mind of looking for a physician to getting into somebody's office. They connect that for you. So it basically does what a website does. You know, I would say, and I always say this, to start with what the world generally uses, which is a phenomenal website, Google, Facebook, all the above. ZocDoc can only help you, okay? But in terms of what you need first, first you got to have the cake before you put icing on. And a cake in today's day and age is a gorgeous website. that's representative of your practice. There's no question about it. And then from there, okay, ZocDoc. It's a listing. It's a listing. And you know, and look. And by the way, let me tell you this: if you're tracking it and you're seeing that new patients are coming from it, I would never tell you to stop doing that. If something is making the practice money, keep going. Great. But just make sure you can track it. And you can, because ZocDoc makes that very simple. So ZocDoc's great.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason. And once again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact me after this, and we'll make sure your questions get answered. All right. And thank you, Jason, one more time. And we appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. You have a good night.
Okay, you too. Bye, everybody.